Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. I've lived in my house for over 15 years and never had any issues with neighbors or my home. That all changed when a new family moved in next door about 6 months ago. From day one, the wife just gave me bad vibes with her entitled attitude. She complained about every little thing and always demanded to speak to whoever was in charge to get her way. So I wasn't surprised when she started hassling me about my garage. I don't use it for parking cars since I have a long driveway. Instead, I use the space for storage and my workshop to build stuff. Well, this lady, who I'll call Karen of course, took issue with my garage for whatever reason. It started with her making snide comments whenever she saw me working in there with the door open. She'd say things like, "Must be nice to have space to waste." At first, I just ignored her nonsense. But then she started getting really pushy about me not utilizing the garage properly. She'd knock on my door and lecture me about how I needed to park my car in there, or else I was depriving the neighborhood of much-needed street parking. Again, I brushed off her ridiculous logic. But Karen just wouldn't let it go. One day she saw me loading some tools into the garage and stormed over yelling about how I was devaluing the whole community by using my garage as a workshop. She ranted about how she was going to speak to the city council and homeowners association to force me to only use my garage for its intended purpose. I finally lost my cool and told Karen in no uncertain terms to mind her own damn business. I explained how I was well within my rights to use my property as I saw fit. Of course, she didn't take that too kindly. Karen glared and threatened me, saying I'd regret crossing her. In hindsight, I should have realized she was crazy enough to actually follow through on her threats. A few days later, I had to go away overnight on a work trip. When I got back and pulled into my driveway, I noticed the side door to my garage was slightly ajar. That immediately struck me as odd since I specifically remembered locking it. I grabbed a flashlight from my car and cautiously went to investigate. As I got closer, I could see shadows moving inside the garage. I braced myself for a confrontation with an intruder. I shoved the door open, ready to protect my property. But I was not prepared for the sight that awaited me. There was Karen, busy arranging boxes and furniture in my garage. "What the hell?" I yelled. "Get out of my garage!" Karen simply glanced over with an annoyed look and said, "I'm almost done. No need to shout." I was completely flabbergasted. I demanded to know what she thought she was doing trespassing on my property. "Trespassing?" Karen snapped back. "I'm simply moving into this unused space since you don't seem to need it." She then launched into a whole speech about how I wasn't utilizing the garage properly as a homeowner. Karen declared that it was her duty to ensure proper use of neighborhood resources, so she had taken it upon herself to repurpose my garage into her own living space. I was so shocked I could barely form words as she prattled on. Was this woman insane? But Karen was dead serious. She claimed it was perfectly legal for her to annex my garage since I had failed to use it to her standards. As if that wasn't bad enough, she then revealed that she had changed the locks on the side door. She held up a new key and smugly informed me that only she had a copy now. I absolutely lost it and started yelling at her to get the hell out immediately. But Karen refused to budge. "I'll be reporting you to the authorities for harassment if you continue with this verbal abuse," she threatened. Part of me wanted literally drag her out, but I was too worried about potential legal issues. So instead, I warned Karen she was making a huge mistake and marched off to call the police. I explained the whole ridiculous situation to the dispatcher, who seemed just as baffled as me. They assured me officers would be there soon to handle things. It took a few hours, but eventually 2 policemen showed up and I brought them to the garage. One peeked inside, then immediately radioed for backup. Even the cops seemed stunned when they saw Karen casually sitting on a chair, sipping tea like she owned the place. The officer in charge questioned her briefly, and Karen was totally unapologetic. She maintained her right to claim my unused garage. The policeman shook his head in disbelief. He told her in no uncertain terms that she had to vacate immediately, or she'd be arrested for trespassing. Karen argued and tried to insist the law was on her side, but the cops were done playing games. They gave her a final warning and said she had 5 minutes to vacate or they'd place her in handcuffs. Well, that finally wiped the smug look off Karen's face. She huffed indignantly and threatened to sue me for harassment. But eventually Karen gathered up her stuff and left after changing the lock back. The police officers just chuckled in disbelief. They reassured me I had every right to use my own garage as pleased, though they did warn me to keep an eye out in case Karen tried something again. After profusely thanking them, I changed the garage locks once more for good measure. In the following days, I kept catching Karen snooping around my property trying to find another way in. I ended up having to get a restraining order after I found her trying to break in through a window late one night. Thankfully, I haven't had any more issues with her since. But I did invest in some home security cameras just to be safe. The whole ordeal was just so wild and unbelievable. I still can hardly fathom the audacity and entitlement of that woman, who literally tries to just take over someone else's garage because you don't think they should use it for storage. That Karen was definitely several sandwiches short of a picnic. I just hope I never have to deal with such a deranged neighbor ever again. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I used to work at a distribution warehouse, and last summer I experienced stress and depression that was so severe it led to anxiety attacks. This was primarily due to a specific employee and the CEO, resulting in a hostile work environment. I found myself taking more sick days than usual and was asked for a doctor's note during a meeting involving me, the CEO, and the person who essentially ran the company. He was understanding and genuinely concerned about my well-being, while the CEO seemed irritated by my increased sick leave. We completed the section of the doctor's note that requires input from both the employee and the company, and I scheduled an appointment with my doctor. After my doctor's assessment, he diagnosed me with stress, depression, and anxiety attacks. He recommended that I be allowed short breaks for fresh air, given the poor air quality in the warehouse, and a reduction in my weekly hours from 35 to 20. He also suggested therapy. The bill was sent directly to the company, as per legal requirements when they request one. Feeling overwhelmed after the appointment, I called my employer to inform them that the bill was being sent to them and that I needed the rest of the day off. This was about 2 hours earlier than my usual departure time, and I had already worked before the appointment. They were understanding and supportive. The following day, while at work, I discussed the doctor's note with the person I referred to as Cedric, who was responsible for running the place. I'll call him Cedric from now on because he was a kind and friendly individual. Yes, that's a Harry Potter reference. We agreed that I would have an additional day off, ensuring I worked no more than 2 consecutive days, extended my lunch break to accommodate the new schedule, and started later to avoid the busiest period, as I had pointed out to him. The CEO was not part of this discussion because he was absent that day. The following Thursday, I was summoned to a meeting with both of them scheduled for Friday. I assumed it was to discuss how well my adjusted schedule was working and perhaps make minor adjustments. The CEO, as usual, displayed an unpleasant attitude, while Cedric appeared unusually quiet and uncomfortable. The CEO reviewed the doctor's note with me, expressing confusion about the part related to fresh air. I explained it to him and shared my positive experiences with the new schedule, despite the only change being an additional day off on Wednesdays. He then slid a piece of paper across the desk, informing me that I was being terminated. I was stunned, read the document, and signed it, as I felt there were no other options. I was given a copy of the document, and then they accompanied me to the warehouse to announce the news to my coworkers. My boss, who liked me and had not been informed, was equally shocked and angered. I left the premises and went home. I contacted my union, providing them with a copy of the termination document, a copy of my employment contract, and a detailed timeline of events. I had not been working since that day, as I had no desire to continue with the company. I briefly returned one day to return my key and uniform and say farewell to my coworkers. I was included as a recipient on every email sent by the union employee handling my case to the company, and the union lawyer sent me all the emails sent to the company's attorney. Several significant developments occurred through this process, which I won't detail, but here are the key points. 1. I had not received a proper formal termination letter. While the one I was given was legally binding, it was not correctly structured. 2. My job responsibilities had gradually changed, but my contract had not been updated accordingly, making it incorrect. 3. Consequently, instead of being entitled to 1 month's severance pay, I was entitled to 3 months. As this agreement was reached after the initial month had begun, an additional month was added, resulting in 4 months of severance pay. 4. Since there was no legitimate reason for my termination, it was deemed an unreasonable dismissal, a legal term. We had the option to either settle or take the company to court. 5. Given the strength and influence of my union, which is one of the largest in the area, and the CEO's realization that he was unaware of its power, he hired an expensive attorney. This was a financial burden for the company, which was already struggling and had lost a customer the day before I was terminated. 6. The settlement was negotiated between my union and the company's attorney. I was given the choice to accept it or proceed to court. Following a conversation with the union advisor managing my case, I decided to accept the settlement. 7. The company's attorney delayed the signing of the settlement agreement, likely due to the CEO's reluctance to pay it, especially considering the company's financial troubles. The payment was due on the following payday after all parties, myself, the union employee handling my case, the union's lawyer, the CEO, and the company's attorney, had signed it. In the end, I received compensation for 4 months of being out of work, and a substantial settlement for the unreasonable dismissal and failure to update my contract. The CEO was also required to publicly acknowledge that my position within the company had been eliminated, with my responsibilities redistributed among several employees. This was primarily because my role had evolved to that of an assistant manager. Morale of the story: join a union, have them review your contract, and ensure your contract accurately reflects your current duties. The next one is a petty revenge story. At my middle school, we had a vice principal who fancied herself a dictator. Any tiny bit of power she got was an issue. But I was a middle schooler at the time, and a good kid, not often in trouble, so I didn't cross her path until 8th grade. Her friend was a bus driver named Pat. For 6th and 7th grade years, we had an awesome bus driver. He was nice to the kids, let us put the windows down when the Georgia heat got too much, etc. But he retired, and the bus driver we got was an extremely angry middle-aged woman named Pat, who did not like children and made that clear every day. "The windows stay up or we go back to the school," she would yell as she had the only fan blowing in her face on a 100-plus degree school bus. Ostensibly, this was to keep us from throwing things out of the bus, but that was never an issue before or after. The real reason was that before the bus driver could leave the bus at the end of the day, all the windows had to be back up and locked. So this saved her effort. My bus stop was the first she drove by, but the last to pick up, and had been that way for years. Pat changed this and decided she only wanted to stop on the first pass by and kept threatening to leave the kids in my neighborhood if we made her stop twice. I first got on the Karen VP's radar because Pat left me on the side of a very busy road one morning. She could have stopped but wagged her finger at me as she drove away and left me. I flipped off the kids laughing at me out of the back window, but the bus driver Pat thought I was flipping her off. I didn't get suspended because she left me with no way to get to school on the side of an extremely busy road, and my mom threatened to sue if it happened again. But after that, they had it out for me. Pat tried several times to get me on anything. She even coached a kid to say I bullied him, but when the real principal brought in the kid, he said, "No, OP is my friend, it was those other kids," and a bunch of other little stuff. Anything to get me in trouble. So the petty revenge comes in here. I was doing my best to make the bus driver's life hell in little passive-aggressive ways. She got annoyed at anything, so it was easy. But Karen was harder to do anything to. After fighting with the bus driver and the assistant principal for most of the year, revenge came in the form of a police fundraiser. They were advertising it on the local TV news and local radio stations. If you put someone up for arrest, the cops would show up and throw someone in handcuffs and put them in jail until they could call a few people and fundraise the bail. The person who set up the arrest had to pay like $10, but it was worth it. My mom, after being annoyed by Pat and Karen all year, put Karen, the assistant principal, up for arrest. The cops showed up and took her to the room where she could call her friends and raise the money for her to go. The idea was that Mom was going to keep having her arrested as long as she could, except no one would give her the bail money, not even for a charity. So she ended up missing most of a day, sitting in the police precinct, trying to get anyone to put up enough money for her to leave. Eventually, the cops told my mom that they had to let her go because it had gone on too long. She was the only one who didn't raise the bail money that day. Letting her know exactly how much she meant to everyone at the school felt great. I had a friend who heard her complaining about it later that day. She had called the principal, who did donate some, but the other teachers gave nothing, and none of her friends would help out. She apparently thought one of the teachers put her up for it. It's so minor and so petty it almost doesn't count. But when I left that school at the end of the year, Mom went up and asked her, "How was jail?" before we walked away for the last time. First time I ever heard a ree sound from a human. The next one is a malicious compliance story. This happened to me about 2 years ago, but a former coworker just reminded me of it, and I'm pretty sure it counts as MC. I'll try to keep it short, but it's a little long. I used to be a service manager at one of the biggest locations of a popular Mexican grill. I won't say which, but guac was $1.95 extra, and we were required to ask everyone if they were okay with paying that price. One Sunday morning, our second busiest shift of the week, 2 of my line people called out, so we were struggling to get all of our prep done before opening at 11. We are just wrapping up when in comes Karen, 10 minutes before opening through the side door marked "Employees Only," with 15 preteen girls in tow. My cook recognizes her as she regularly comes in during the dinner shift and is extremely abusive and cruel to all the Latino workers. Karen tells me they can order whatever they want, throws her credit card at me, and goes to sit down at a table and fiddles on her phone. Now I can't ring up her order without her standing there because of the company rules, and I am 30 weeks pregnant and just want to take my break. I prego waddled over to Karen's table to try and inform her of that when she literally flicks her hand at me to dismiss me. Not only have I been at the store since 7 and done 2 different people's jobs on top of my own, but I have my son's head grinding against my pelvic bones and kicking me like crazy. I am in no mood. When I try to tell her again, she looks at me with what I can only describe as seething contempt and says, "What part of they can get whatever they want did you not understand? I don't care what you charge me as long as I get a receipt. Don't interrupt me again or I'll get your fat ass fired." Now, I never cry, but that almost got me. Motherhood is awesome, but pregnancy sucks. I finally managed to pick my jaw off the ground and stammer, "All right, ma'am, I'll ring up whatever they want and bring you a receipt." The girls were really nice, and most of them ordered double meat, and they all got a bottled water and chips and guac. Every last one. My cashier and I are just vibrating with glee as we ring them up and watch the bill climb to like $250. I brought the bill to Karen and was pretty excited when she didn't immediately check it. I made my own food and told the cook to come get me when the show starts. I'm halfway done eating when I see him waving to the camera, howling with laughter, so I head up. Karen is foaming at the mouth, screaming for the manager, and when she sees that the manager is me, she literally grinds her teeth and slaps her receipt on the table. She manages to choke out the word refund. The girls have all pretty much finished their food, so I inform her that I won't be doing that because I would lose my job for giving away that much critical inventory, meat, guac, cheese, for free. Then I gently remind her that she told me twice that she could get anything as long as she got a receipt. She just keeps demanding a refund and calling me stupid and fat, again pregnant. At this point, her screaming is holding up the very long line, and customers are shouting at her to just leave. That's when she pushed me, hard. My cashier caught me so I didn't fall down, but 2 of our regulars, who are police, see it and immediately cuff her. In this state, any use of physical force against a pregnant woman is classified as aggravated battery or something like that. I felt bad for the kids, and I was fine, so I kept telling them I didn't want to press charges. But they said that at that point it didn't matter, because the woman had done it in front of on-duty officers, so she's getting arrested. They had to call the kids' parents to come get them because she was their church's youth leader and get statements. My GM came in and let me go home with a full day's pay. She tried to take the case to trial, but they had video and like 20 witness statements, so she ended up taking a couple of years probation or something, all because I did exactly what she told me to. The next one is an entitled people story. My mom has 5 kids, and I'm the middle child who is 19. When I was 8, she got a job 3 hours away. She leaves for 4 days usually and comes back for 2. It was my responsibility to clean and watch the 2 younger siblings, and my older siblings basically just had to stay home, so this arrangement was legal. I've always been the black sheep. For example, my older sister got her dream haircut and highlights on her 11th birthday. My little sister is allowed to fix her hair. I wasn't allowed to have a haircut until I was 15. I had to write 4 pages to convince her to let me since it was way past my waist, and I didn't want a salon, so money wasn't the problem. Anyway, Because I raised my siblings, I was never able to do clubs, play sports, go to games, attend dances, or get a job. When I applied for college in 2021, my mom said I could only go to community college. I rebelled and chose the university 25 minutes from home, since I got a grant that allowed me to go for free. My mom tells my younger siblings they don't have to listen to me, clean, or respect me. My little brother is 15 and doesn't even know how to work the washing machine. Every time I cook for them, it's not good enough. Every time I politely ask him to do anything, he calls me a derogatory term, and my mom lets him. I'm not allowed to disrespect them, so it's unprovoked. Since they don't respect me at all, I decided I was leaving this August. My mom is still furious. She keeps calling me a selfish narcissist for making her life harder. The icing on the cake, though, is that she wants me to pay her since I'm moving. Again, I can't have a job until I move out. I've been making money for my dorm by babysitting a family friend's kids and cleaning my aunt's house on the days my mom is home. Anyway, she and I were on our way to Target so I could get some things, when she said she needed my money that I made. I asked why, and she said it's because she raised me. I told her it's her job as a parent, and then she replied by saying she could have gotten rid of me and wanted me to thank her for not getting rid of me. I could not believe it. Since I didn't give her my money, tensions are high. She keeps saying to her friends that I'm making her life bad. Entitled mothers are so difficult. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.